Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Head for Glory, and it's from the publishing company Glotznosh. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page to find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. To do that, all you got to do is follow the link in the top corner of your screen or down in the description section underneath this video. Go there, find out more info, and hopefully consider backing the project. Now, Head for Glory is a competitive sort of arena combat game with some card management and resource management as well. You and the other players are actually arena warriors in ancient Rome, vying to, and in this version of Rome, you're vying to become the emperor through combat and currying the favor of the crowd. But there's one other important difference in this version of Rome as well. In this version of Rome, if you become decapitated, if someone literally cuts your head off, you don't die, necessarily. Instead, you can actually just get a new head of some other famous warrior and use their special powers and abilities. And in fact, how you're going to win Head for Glory is getting the head of the previous emperor, Caesar, and the prestige that comes along with that and his special powers as well. Now, of course, there's more to the game than that, but let's go ahead and take a look at how the game plays with a prototype copy of the game. So just do bear in mind that what you see in this version may change in the final version. You'll notice that some of the cards that I show you don't have artwork. Of course they will in the final version, things like that. But it should be more than enough to show you how the game plays, and then we will come back and discuss it further. Head for Glory is a competitive combat strategy game for 3 to 4 players. Each player controls a decapitated Roman warrior using the power of a newly acquired head to battle it out in the arena for the chance to take the head of the former Emperor Caesar and become Emperor themselves. You'll use your abilities and weapons to try and decapitate your opponents and curry favor with the crowd. Losing your head is just a temporary setback, as there are more heads to be had, but only the individuals who can acquire Caesar's head and hold on to it will have a chance at winning the game and being crowned emperor. Set up the game by first laying out the main game board. Place a round marker on the first space of its track. Shuffle the 3 decks of cards players will be drawing from during the game and place them on their indicated spaces. Make stocks of the 3 types of dice: white dice for attacking and blocking, red dice for rage attacks, and black dice for focus attacks. Place barricade tokens according to the number of players, and also make stocks of extra barricades, favor tokens, and extra cubes. Each player will choose a color and place a token of that color on the first space of the track, representing their path to the hearth and victory. In the second space, place a standee representing Caesar's head. Each player will also take a corresponding standee with a base of their chosen color and take turns placing theirs on one of the marked spaces, with some spaces only being available in a 3 or 4 player game specifically. The players will also insert a token representing their chosen head into the standee when they get to that point, but we'll get back to that in a moment. Near the main board, each player will have their own tableau board. 1 attribute cube is placed on the 0 spaces on each of your 4 attributes: ranged, melee, block, and movement. Place another cube on the 15 spot of your life bar to denote your starting life points. Randomly or by choice, every player will choose a head tile and place it on their board. One side of each head tile has artwork, but the other side explains in detail that head's special powers. Each head's powers are unique and can either influence combat, help with drawing cards, assist with your other attributes, or give you favor, or in one case even let you summon an eagle minion. Once every player has a starting head, place the accompanying token in its standee as described before, and place the extra head tiles and tokens nearby for later use. Lastly, every player gets 3 favor tokens and 3 cards, drawn in any combination from the 3 decks. Roll dice to determine who will go first and begin the game. Turns will then go in clockwise order when the current player is finished. On your turn, the first thing you can do is spend favor tokens. You can spend them in 2 ways. First, you can increase an attribute, which requires spending favor tokens equal to the number in the next open space of the chosen attribute column. For example, if I want to increase my ranged attack here, I'd have to spend 2 favor tokens, and then I place an attribute cube in that spot. The next time I want to do this, it will be more expensive. Alternatively, I can spend one favor token to draw one card from any deck. There is no limit to the amount of cards you can have in hand or draw at one time, so long as you have the favor to spend. There are 3 ways to gain more favor. Deal enough damage to either push your opponent past one of their life thresholds or decapitate them altogether, netting you 1 or 2 tokens respectively. Pick a new head after getting decapitated, which gets you 1 favor. Or stop, walk across, or start your turn on a Fountain of Favor, which gets you 1 or 2 tokens depending on your progress in the attribute that is depicted on it. After deciding what to do with your favor, you can choose to move and attack if possible. Your current attribute rating and movement determines how many spaces you can move your standee in one turn, but you can split that movement up before and after your attack. Barricades and your opponent's standees serve as obstacles that you cannot move through. During your turn, you may play up to 2 cards from hand. Each of the 3 types of cards will give you a bonus to either melee attacks, ranged attacks, movement, or blocking. When played, you'll use either the first or second line ability, depending on how high the applicable attribute is. The third line ability is powerful and can only be played if you are the current owner of Caesar's Head, which we'll talk about in a little bit. If you do decide to attack, it must be either melee or ranged, depending on the distance from you to the target. Melee attacks can only be used against opponents in adjacent spaces, while ranged attacks can only be used if there's at least 1 space between you and your opponent. For melee attacks, roll a number of white dice equal to your melee attribute. Your opponent will then have a chance to block by rolling a number of dice equal to their block attribute. The total of all the block results is subtracted from the total of all the attack results. If any attack damage is left, it's subtracted from the target's life points. Also for melee attacks only, you can either charge up or use rage dice at the time you attack. If you're charging up, you simply take a red die and place it in one of the 3 slots on the top of your board, which is the maximum that you can hold. You may instead use the rage dice you've accumulated before by rolling and adding them to an attack roll, after which they go away, but you can't charge and use the rage dice with the same attack action. Ranged attacks are rolled and blocked in the same way as melee attacks, but they use the ranged attribute instead. Also, ranged attacks gain the special temporary black focus dice to roll with their attack, 1 for each space between you and your target. If you manage to inflict damage to your opponent, it can grant you favor tokens if their life points slip past the thresholds indicated on their life bar. If you reduce your opponent to 0 life, in addition to 2 favor, they are also decapitated. An opponent who has been decapitated loses their current head tile and the abilities that came with it, and cannot attack on their turn. After that, they will select a new head from the available heads you set aside earlier and also gain a favor token. After that, they can take their turns as usual. When every player has taken a turn, move the round tracker down 1. Keeping track of rounds is important in order to determine when you reach round 5. At that time, decapitating opponents becomes different and crucially important. The first time someone performs a decapitation when you get to round 5, that player moves their marker up 1 space on the victory track and takes Caesar's Head, physically replacing it on their standee, but keeping their previous head as its abilities still apply. But now, you may also use the third ability on cards as described earlier. From this point forward, the only way to take Caesar's Head is to decapitate the player who currently has it, and doing so will advance you 1 space on the victory track. You may also advance a space for managing to hold on to Caesar's Head until the beginning of your next turn after you've gained it. If your player marker makes it to the end of the track, the top of the stairs, you will rekindle the hearth and win the game, becoming the new emperor. And that is Head for Glory. Well, if I was just going to talk about the thematic premise of Head for Glory, that alone would be enough for me to tell you that it's interesting and unique among the many games that are out there. Of course, games that are based in ancient Rome, especially in the Eurogame sector of board games, are a dime a dozen. Throw a rock and you'll hit one. In a game store, you'll probably hit several as it bounces along. But taking this tack with it, first of all, making it not necessarily a strict Euro game, although there are elements of that and how the card management and resource management and things like that, but making it into that mixed together with an arena combat game is unique and interesting all in and of itself, And the head thing is just another layer there. But it's not just a pace-it-on theme. It is an actual gameplay mechanic that, obviously it could have been other things like, here's, you're swapping out scepters or something. But no, having it be that thematic element of the different heads and having it be an actual spatial thing on the board where you're swapping out the heads on your standees, swapping out the head tile with the, the high-quality artwork on your tableau board, just takes it to that whole other level of, wow, this is something that stands out in a crowded board game scene, and boy is it crowded, especially in this type of genre or thematic genre of games of ancient Rome. So there is that. That alone should get you some eyeballs on the game. Your eyeballs on the game. You should take a look at that. But when you get into the other intricate parts of the game as well, there's a lot of interesting things here. How the attributes work and how it's on the surface of it very simple because you have 4 attributes and they start off at a certain point and you can upgrade them. So what's the big deal? Well, that's where the resource management comes into play with those favor tokens. And that's just one thing you can do with the favor tokens. You can also purchase cards with them to use. But specifically about those attributes, having to be able to say, like, okay, I want to obviously increase whatever attributes I can, but what's going to be most useful to me at any given point? And what kind of strategy am I going for? Do I want to try to focus on ranged attacks as much as possible, and therefore it's not enough to just be putting all of your points into getting the attributes for your ranged attacks? It's also about getting those ranged attack cards as well, so then you want to focus there. But it gets very, very expensive in terms of favor tokens when you're trying to go down that track as quickly as possible. In that case, it might be better for you to diversify. Maybe in certain situations you're going to want to do melee and ranged attacks, especially if you've been neglecting your movement attribute. Because then in that case, you're not going to be able to move very far to get to people. So if you've been putting all of your points into melee, what are you going to do then? Then you're going to need to be making ranged attacks. In this game, especially when you get past to that 5th round, when Caesar's head really matters, and we'll get back to that, you really need to be able to deal as much damage as you possibly can to potentially decapitate someone as quickly as possible. Softening someone up is really going to be a problem because if you can't finish the job, someone else will. And when you get to that 5th round, that can be literally game-changing and potentially game-ending at a certain point. So you have to be as strong as you possibly can. So do you put all your eggs in one basket or do you diversify? But it's the same thing with the other 2 abilities, as I mentioned, the movement and the block, because again, you need to be able to move quickly, both to get out of the way of people and to get into people's range as well, into your attack range. And the block, because you're going to be attacked. This is a game that you are constantly in other people's faces. So if you're going to be attacked, and you know that's going to be the case, and no matter how well you attack, you're going to be attacked by either the 3rd or 4th player, or both, especially when you get Caesar's head, then you need to have something in block to try and stave off your own decapitation. And that's also where it comes into play with the cards, too. Spending your favorite tokens on cards, not a bad idea. Spending all of your favorite tokens on just block cards, spending all of your favorite tokens on, or block and movement, or spending all of your favorite tokens on just one type of attack, could work, could not work. And this is where the diversification of strategies comes into play. It's actually not a very difficult game, or extremely complex game at all when you just look at the surface of it. Getting into those individual strategies is where it starts to become more complex, and I haven't even mentioned the bevy of different powers that each of the different heads have to influence things like drawing cards, specific types of attacks, giving you that cool eagle minion. There's so many different outcomes or different things that are going to encourage you to go down different strategic routes and from game to game, and you have to take those into account as well. So again, very straightforward at first. Then as you get into it, it's like, oh, well, now there's a lot of decision making involved. And of course, the whole premise of not just swapping out different heads, but getting to that Caesar head, when like after round 5, the game is off to the races. It's just this incredibly crucial, tense war to get that head and hold on to it. And that's where if someone who has been putting a lot of stuff into block, if they manage to get a hold of that head, this is where that could start to pay dividends if you went that route. But hey, maybe you would rather just go the route of not holding onto the head, but constantly taking it from the other players, because you don't need a lot of points or a lot of spaces on that track to win the game. So if you like the very unique take, extremely unique take on ancient Rome, if you like the in-your-face, constant combat but mixed together with resource management and hand card management, and if you think this appeals to you or to someone else that you know in your gaming group or family, hey, don't take my word for it. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. To do that, follow the link in the top corner of your screen or down in the description section underneath this video. That is Head for Glory from the publishing company Glatznosh. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. And stay safe. Take care.